Okay, so this is an attempt to talk about games where you can actually maybe see the parts of the game. So we'll see how this goes and figure it out from there. I know there's glare, but like lighting is a whole different thing when you have a different setup, and I'm just doing my best. Okay? Okay. So Tova and I went to a family thing. It's actually like extended family, and we didn't know the people, so I wanted to bring a few travel games. So I thought I would specifically talk about a few compact games that I sometimes take if we're going to be around humans and need diversions and things. Most of these are, well, actually, we'll just talk about each one individually. So I've talked about this game before. It's called Cardline Animals, and it's for ages 7 and up, 2 to 8 players, and takes approximately 15 minutes. I don't know if I have ever specifically shown the cards or anything. In Cardline Animals, and there's actually a whole series of these. There's several history ones. There's actually a full board game called, I think it's called Timeline or something like that, where it incorporates lots of these cards. But for example, Cardline Animals, the way the game works is you're given a hand of like, I don't know, 5 to 8 cards. It just depends, I think, on how many people are playing. And the first card will just go in the middle of the game playing area. It's just a picture of an animal. Like, the card will have gray wolf written on the front. Is the common name and the Latin name. It'll also have a picture of a mammal, an amphibian, whatever. But the first card you lay down, you flip it over. On the backs of the cards, you can see that it gives the length of the animal, the weight of the animal, and the lifespan of the animal. So before you start your round, you decide, hey, this round we're going to concentrate on lifespan. And so your job is, with your hand of cards, you're not to flip them over. You're only looking at this side of the card. And I have to decide, does a camel live longer than a gray wolf or less than a gray wolf? I'm going to guess that it lives longer. So I'm going to commit to this living longer, and I'm flipping over. In fact, yes, 12 years for the gray wolf, 48 years for the camel. And you go on, and for example, like, okay, so my next card, let's say, is the pigeon, or my next player's card is the pigeon. What do we think? Less than 12 years? Between 12 and 48? I'm going to say less than 12. Oh, and actually I'm right. But eventually you'll need to put cards in the middle, like a dolphin. This card's a dolphin. I don't know. I think a dolphin probably lives longer than a wolf, but less than a camel. 30 years. Oh, I'm so good at this game. So anyway, you go on like that, and you basically, the first one whose cards have run out is the winner. If you put your card down and you're wrong, let's say I thought, oh, this is definitely where this goes, and I was wrong, I discard that card. It goes back into the discard pile, and I take a new card. So you can see I basically don't get rid of any of my cards. So it's a fun little game. Most of the things that are animals you're familiar with, you know that a giraffe is likely longer than a gray wolf. But lots of times the weight really throws you off, and the age span, especially lifespan, is one that is constantly surprised by. So it's fun for adults that way and children. Like, the mechanic is super easy for them to understand. It's about animals. They're already engaged, and that's that. But the new one that we got is actually called Cardline Dinosaurs. This one is infinitely more complicated. Now, again, the mechanic is still exactly the same. You have your cards, you're putting them in order, but the fun thing is the cards you're like infinitely less familiar with. So, for example, you might get this guy, who is clearly called the Bulktherium. Oh, I wonder what you are, sir. Well, my card is, in fact, this guy. Oh, so I feel like he's bigger. But again, you have to just pick a trait. Now, they do suggest, I think, that you can actually pick any trait instead of in the animals game, where you're actually specifically saying, okay, we're going to pick one of these 3 traits to put these in order by. I think with the dinosaurs, they specifically say that you can just use multiple traits. Like, okay, I think that this guy is bigger. Okay, but then I'm going to say, oh, but this guy, I'm not sure if he's bigger, but I think he is an earlier dinosaur. So I'll put him over here. Because this game has, on the back of its card, it has length and it has weight, but it also has time period. So you can see along these sides, the closer you get to the top, the closer you are to modern times, and the farther back you go. the farther back you go. Okay. So, but we tried a game like that, and it was very complicated because it got into like. But anyway, it's really the game is not about who's winning. It's just about this is cool stuff. But anyway, so that's the same principle, but it's very fun, and you get all the fun dinosaurs, and you get so like some of them you're pretty like okay, I know that's a big guy, but this guy I don't know. He could be like the size of nothing. In fact, he is 6 feet tall and weighs 75 pounds. But like, well, what is this guy? Is he giant? Sorry, our lunch is done. Is he giant or is he tiny? In fact, he's relatively small. But the best card in the whole game, though, because you not only get the dinosaurs, but you also get different mammals and stuff coming up. Like, oh, I get a pygmy mammoth. I get Neanderthals. But the best card of all, are you ready for it? I gotta move these all out of the way because this is awesome. The modern man card. Like, look at the swagger, people. That's right. Modern man is all about the swagger. So I thought you might appreciate that. So anyway, that's Cardline dinosaurs. Wink. And Cardline animals. Again, they make a ton of different games. The Cardline dinosaurs has a ton of cards. This is half of the... This is actually less than half the deck, or half of the cards that come in the box. And the Cardline animals just has enough for one slot, so it has about half that many. But the replayability is really high, unless you're like crazy memorization person, which I'm not. Oh, I wanted to say too about Cardline animals and Cardline dinosaurs. Again, I think the age on the dinosaurs might even be... No, they're both... Yeah, they're both listed as 7 and up, but kids, I mean, kids 5 and up can definitely play these games. Because again, the mechanic is not at all difficult. And there's not a strategy involved. It's just a kind of a guessing game in terms of where you're going to put your card. So I don't think that the age limit might be like when they can play by themselves. Like I would not try to put 2 5-year-olds necessarily on this together without adult right away. But definitely after a while, most certainly they could handle that. But so the next game that we took with us is a game called Lost Cities. And this game has actually been around quite a while. It's by Reiner Knizia, and this is by Cosmos. They do a bunch of 2-player games in this same format box. So this is only a 2-player game. It is it's specified 10 and up, and it says about 30 minutes. I say the 30 minutes is right. 10 and up, I feel like you could definitely 8 and up, as long as the kid has played some board games before. But there are some strategy things involved. The mechanic is super easy, but there can be more strategy involved. So anyway, this one actually comes with a board, but the board is totally unnecessary to play the game. But it is pretty. So you have this board that looks like this, which is less glary in your life because you have better lighting set up. And basically it is just a set collecting game with some pusher, well, I mean, I guess all set collecting, all set collecting has pusher luck, but it has pusher luck elements to it. What you're doing is you are both explorers, you and your opponent are explorers, and you're going on expeditions. And to go on these expeditions, you need to collect these treasures to make your expedition financially feasible. Okay, so you have cards number 2 through 10 in these suits. You have like the crazy volcanic suit, and you have the cool Arctic suit, and the underwater suit. And all of the cards themselves are different, even within the same suit. So, for example, the 8 in the Arctic has this cool, sort of like Tibetan-y looking temples, whereas the 2 has more of these like tomb areas. So, in addition to that, those kinds of cards, the 2 through 10s, you also have these kinds of cards, which I apologize, did not look to specifically see what they are called in the game. But what these cards are is basically that you're getting financial backers for your expedition. So if you play these cards, you definitely can increase your rewards, but you can also increase your losses if you don't play them correctly. And how that is when I decide to play a suit, like say I'm going to go on my Arctic adventure, I'm doing it, I'm going forward. I automatically, as soon as I lay a card down, start with negative 20 points. So my job is to get my cards to higher than 20 points. If, before I start laying cards down, I put down these backers, these financial backers, one card doubles my risk and gain. Two cards trebles it, etc., etc. So if I put this down, now I'm at negative 40 points instead of just negative 20. However, this guy does count now twice as much for my good, so he counts 8 to the good. So basically, if you get to 20 points, if this sum is 20 points, then everything over that gets doubled. But if you don't make it, if you think, I'm definitely going to make it, something happens and you only get 11 points, well then you're negative 9, you're 9 below your 20, so you're 18 in the hole when you go out to tally up your points. The reason there's kind of a push or luck element is if I just started to start laying down my cards, like say I have this 4 and the 7 and I'm really committed and I'm feeling good about it, I can no longer lay down a 5 or a 6. I'm committed to laying only on top in increasing value. So now I need to wait for like an 8, 9, or 10. And what always happens is as soon as you make a big jump like that, you get the 6 in your next hand. And you're like, oh. Because you're working with a hand of cards and each turn really is play a card, and get a card. So you either play it on your array or you discard it to the middle. So like say I'm the opponent and I've been holding this dumb white card, but I don't have really very many white cards, so I know I'm not going to use it. Well, as soon as she lays down these, I can say, oh, I'm done with that. I don't need it. And in fact, if I'm the opponent to this player, I could even say, oh, I'm not going for white because I don't have enough to get my 20 points. I don't need that one, and I can't pick it up. However, if I get really sassy and just cannot get rid of cards and I put down that, then I, as this player, can pick up the top card from any of these discard piles, and I can play it on my next turn above these. So hopefully that makes sense. So there's some fun pusher, like you often have lots of times you have a hand of cards and you have you might have 3 suits with a 9 and a 10, but you don't want to commit to putting them down yet because you want some lower numbers too to get up to 20. So there's this tension of, oh, do I play this now? And again, the whole thing where you don't know if you're going to get the points, but you have that doubler card, so you think, oh, I could really rack them up. And maybe you have like a 4 and a 5, and you think, oh, that's pretty close. All I have to get is a couple more cards. And then inevitably your opponent is like, oh, never mind. I have the 7, 8, 9, and 10. So that's a good one. Again, that is Lost Cities by Reiner Knizia, and it's produced by Cosmos. So the next game we're talking about is called Deep Sea Adventure. It comes in this super tiny, super cute little box. It is unfortunately not super tinily priced. I think it's in the like $20-ish range, like 20 to 25. But it's a really cute game and it's pretty awesome. So again, it's called Deep Sea Adventure, and it's for I think 2 to 6. I can find it. So the age ranges are 8 and up, 2 to 6 players, and it's about 30 minutes playtime. I think that's all probably about right. You can definitely play with younger players. They'll enjoy the mechanic of it, but they will not. They will kill you all, basically. In this game, you are deep sea treasure hunters, clearly. Sorry, this is all extra. I didn't actually put out the full array of tiles because I was just trying to get everything to fit in the space. But you're basically deep sea adventurers, and you are going down into the ocean deeper and deeper and deeper. And the farther you go down into the ocean, the more valuable your treasures are. So for example, this treasure up here only worth 2 points. Some of these are actually only worth 0. But if I get down to the squares, 5 points. But I get down to the hexes, 15 points. Okay. You don't know the value of any of the treasures as you're playing. And in fact, even when you gather your treasure, you don't know the value. But it's all nice and fun. You roll 2 dice that are 1 to 3. So there's no 4, 5s, or 6s. So you roll 2 dice and that indicates your movement. So I'm like, okay, I move 2. 1, 2. My other player goes next. She rolls. She gets 3. Well, one nice thing is she counts 1, 2, 3. You skip. Whenever somebody's occupying a space, you just pretend like that one does not exist. So you get like a nice hopscotching effect. So say the next person rolls a 4. She counts 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can see that you can get into the ocean very quickly. Let's say the game progresses and we have more like this configuration. At some point, somebody's going to say, all right, I'm getting a treasure. So orange decides, hey, I'm going to get this treasure, and I'm actually going to start to go back up. We usually just turn our people over to indicate we're start going back up. Because you cannot go up and then down, up and down. You have to only go down and then only go up. So I'm going to put my little marker there to show that I have taken my treasure. I don't know the value of that. And I'm also committing to go back up. The difference is now on my next turn when I roll my dice and I go back up the ocean, back up to the submarine, excuse me, I start to consume air for every treasure I have taken. And because the treasure is so awesome and so heavy, it actually slows my movement down. So for example, here I rolled a 4. If I have one treasure, I move the air track down, but I can only move 3 now. So as you can see, you get tempted to get more and more treasures. Like, well, I'm coming up, I'm just going to get this treasure too. I want all the treasures. But now, though, conceivably, I could roll. If I roll a snake eyes, I actually don't even get to move. Even if I roll my best roll, I still only get to move 4. And again, now I'm taking up 2 oxygen instead of just 1. And everybody on this pitiful, very pitiful submarine is sharing the same air. So if you have somebody who wants to go down here and be really sassy and start picking up treasures, like she's like, oh no, I only want the hexagon treasures. She's going to kill all of you. So there's a push your luck element in terms of how deep do you want to go. There's randomness because you don't actually know what the treasure tiles are going to be worth. But there's also this fun group push your luck. And you get to yell at each other because, you know, I would be yelling at this person that she's going to kill us all. And then inevitably you get somebody who gets really close up here and you're all like down here dying, suffocating. And they're up here and they're like, oh, now I'm going to start getting every treasure that I go. And so they start taking more and more and more and more and more of the oxygen. And it goes super fast. So you think you're safe until about 2 rounds before you all die. It's pretty entertaining. So you can see it's kind of a unique, it's definitely a unique concept in terms of like using the same air and that sort of push your luck thing. It's fun to not know what's your treasure total. Also the thing is if you all make it back, which is awesome, then you get to turn over your tiles and then the person with the largest treasures sum is the winner of that round. If you decide here that you're going to die and you want to drop some of your treasures, and like let's say I had all 3 of these treasures, then they would all go down to the bottom of the ocean. And the next time I move, I don't use that extra air. But alas, it gets crazy. So anyways, that one's fun. It's called Deep Sea Adventures. So then the next thing I'll talk about, I know this is kind of weird, but I'll talk about apples. And the reason I want to do it this way is because, well, now I'm just in this mode of doing this overhead thing for the moment, so we're just going to keep on going. So these are my Akani apples that I talked about a little bit last time. And I had this whole thing on the show where I had this realization that I had one of those, like, you know enough to know you know nothing moments. I'm sure you all experienced it with me, where I got all confused in my head about how things worked. So I just wanted to touch base and do a couple of housekeeping things about apples, because hey, I got to read some more stuff about apples, which is pretty cool. So let's do this. So first off, stripe pike. Yeah, striped pike on Etsy. On Ravelry, maybe Etsy, I don't know. Clarified. I was using the word hybrid to indicate what is actually a cross. So I was talking about like how do you get a new variety of apple, but I think I said hybrid. In terms of, so a hybrid is actually when you create offspring from 2 different species. So even though apple varieties are pretty different from each other, they're still the same species and therefore they're not a hybrid. So the next thing that I wanted to talk about was about the variety is actually the result of a cross. So, but the thing that I got confused about was how do they cross the apples? Because apples don't breed true, meaning their offspring are not at all like the parents. How do they actually get a cross variety from a new variety, which is a cross from 2 previous varieties? And actually what they do, I read this really cool article called
Sweet, Tart, Crunchy. Oops, I just knocked the camera. Sorry, guys. How to engineer a better apple.
And I think it was on the NPR website. But they talk about like, and it's by Nevin Martell, if I can read my own handwriting, which is always a surprise if I can. But they talked about how specifically what they really do is they pollinate. For example, if they were going to make a hybrid, see, I did it again. If they were going to cross between a Jonathan and a Golden Delicious, they would take the pollen from the Golden Delicious and individually fertilize the apple blossoms on the Jonathan. But then what they do is plant like 15 to, 50,000 seeds to try to get the apple with the characteristics they want. So they really do have to plant almost every seed from that pollinization to try to get an apple tree that has varieties that they want. And of course, an apple tree doesn't produce apples right away. It's 4 to 5 years later. So when they create these new species, these new crosses, these new varieties of apples, that's why it's such an insane procedure. And maybe it's also why these stinking Honeycrisps are so bajillionly expensive. So anyway, I thought that was really cool that that's what they have to do. The other thing that was very cool, the recent genome study of the Golden Delicious apple points to the fact that 57,000 genes are found in the genome of the Golden Delicious apple. Guess how many humans have? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? Apples, 57,000. 30,000 for humans. Oh. Now, clearly, a lot of genetic information that's included in your genes is dormant. It doesn't really do anything. It's not activated in lots of ways, but it is interesting that they have that much information. So I had this whole crazy fantasies of aliens coming down and finding all this genetic information in the apple and like creating some sort of clean energy research. It's actually not in any way. That is not what you actually get from this information, but it's fun to think about. So the other thing that got me all like confused was, if we have plants and animals that reproduce by sexual reproduction, why are their offspring so much more predictable? Why do they breed true? Because like my zucchini plants, I know what zucchini I'm gonna get from them. And this is where I got in a crazy rabbit hole, which I will not go with you. And this is also where I'll confess to having complete ignorance to my genetic studies, of which I have none. That's called like CP biology. Apples are heterozygous. That means that, like when you talk about your genes and they do like the genes for your hair color, and you get you get 2 from your mom and 2 from your dad, and there's like a dominance recession thing. And like redheads, we have 2 redheaded genes from both our parents, because that's what you get when you have recessive genes. So if, for example, I were to breed with another redhead, we would have a homozygous allele. Like there was only one option for the outcome of that gene pairing. But most things are heterozygous, meaning there's more than one option for each pairing. But apples are in fact called extremely heterozygous because many more of their pairs have the option of creating different traits than not. They have less homozygous pairings, I guess is a better way to say that. So they have less options to be like their parents. That's why they are extremely different than their parent plants. So anyway, that's probably all a little bit weird, since I'm not in any way knowledgeable about genetics. But that's kind of what I like pulled up, and I thought I would just pass it on because I thought it was fun to think about. And yeah, so that'll be this week's episode.